You guys hear me? Joseph Pitchford here. Hello.
We can hear you.
Terrific. I'll go back on mute.
Great.
Thank you.
Hi, Judy.
Hi there. Bing.
Shall we start the meeting?
Yes.
We're going to give just a few more seconds to let everybody hop on so we can get started right on time and have plenty of time for questions. Okay, with that, I will go ahead and kick us off tonight. First of all, welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Jamie Jolly. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting everyone on this call, but hopefully our paths will cross soon. I'm your new president and executive director of Uptown Dallas, Inc. And just so you know, we are recording this evening's session. We want to make that available for people that weren't able to join us directly on the call. We'll start with a few introductions and then we'll get into some Q&A pretty quickly. We want to make sure we have plenty of time for everyone's questions. Just a reminder, Uptown Dallas Inc. enhances the public realm of the Uptown neighborhood. We do this through several different ways. Most of it you all are aware of, but just so to remind you, beautification and maintenance, making sure that the medians and public ways are looking top notch. We also help to fund the McKinney Avenue Trolley. We have different marketing and community events that we share with residents and property owners. And there's the reason that we're all here today, public safety. So Uptown Dallas Inc. uses property assessments to enhance, not replace, the normal services, especially as it relates to public safety. And this includes tactical protection services, which is our security team that we have on the ground. We also have neighborhood patrol officers, which are off-duty DPD officers, and other safety initiatives that we'll talk a little bit about this evening. Much attention has been put on other areas in the city that have more violent crimes, but we know from recent DPD provided statistics that Uptown is seeing more nonviolent crime, which impacts property values, resident safety, and other important elements that have made Uptown such a strong economic engine for the city of Dallas. We want to make sure that the needs of this area are also treated as a priority and appreciate your time and partnership as we move forward. First, I want to start by thanking and acknowledging two folks that are going to kind of help in answering these questions and kicking us off this evening. That would be Dallas Police Department's Chief Israel Herrera, and also District 14 Council Member Paul Ridley is on our Zoom this evening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chuck Del Tufo. Chuck is UDI's Director of Public Safety, and he will cover some other important folks on the call and next steps.
Thank you, Jamie. One of the first people that I'd like to acknowledge is Jose Ruiz. He is the Supervisor for Code Enforcement of Dallas. Michelle Smith, she is the Recovery Care Manager for the Bridge Homeless Recovery Center. And two of our neighborhood patrol officers, the first one is Officer Derek Allen. He's in Uptown throughout the week during the day. And Officer Shaw, he is the evening Uptown officer. They will all be on the call tonight. Thank you.
Yes, okay. And we also want to make sure we share the tip line. So the tip line is fairly new. It's 214-214-UPTN. So again, 214-214-8786. So be sure you have that in your phone if you're out and about and want to notify us. That is a great way to get in contact quickly. So I will go ahead and turn this meeting over to Councilman Ridley. So Ms. Ridley, we haven't had the chance to meet face to face, but it's great to have you tonight. And I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us and talk about public safety. So if you want to go ahead and take it from here.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Uptown Dallas Inc. Jamie, it's great to have you on board. I'm very pleased to be here tonight. It's always
Oh, you're muted.
okay. Am I on now? I should be on now.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
hear you now. Thank you.
Great. Well, I was just starting to say that I'm delighted to be here tonight. I always enjoy talking to Uptown Dallas residents and members. It's such an important part of District 14. It has such a diverse population, diversity of land uses between residential and business uses. And it's just one of the magnets of our district. And it's critical that we keep it safe. We have had a few issues in the past that pop up now and again, and I'd like to address a few of those. First of all, that is the issue of the late night entertainment venues. We have had some issues with them in the past, and some of them, the trouble spots have closed, such as Turkey Dam and Harris House of Heroes. Fortunately, they are gone from Uptown, but others seem to pop up to take their place. One of them was Level Bar. We received reports of loud noise from there recently. We sent the after hours entertainment inspection team out to do a stakeout at the Gables apartment across from the bar. And they have issued notices of violation to the bar for noise violations and failure to register under the promoter ordinance. And that's something that we're going to pursue with citations if we don't get satisfied that they have controlled those situations and applied for a promoter registration permit. And we will continue to monitor it to ensure that they do comply and don't become a nuisance bar in the neighborhood. One of the other initiatives that we have been working on is a special use permit for the late night entertainment district. This is something that has already gone to the Plan Commission for approval of an authorized hearing. That has occurred. And what that means is that to create an overlay of late night entertainment restrictions, we have to go before the Plan Commission for a zoning overlay. And because it involves quite a number of properties, the proper procedure is an authorized hearing. That means that the staff is authorized to survey the area, research it, and make recommendations to the Plan Commission about how we should create this kind of an overlay over the Uptown district. And right now we are in the queue. There are several other authorized hearings ahead of us in the queue. And it depends upon how many staff we have to process these. We're trying to hire additional planners to shorten the wait time. Unfortunately, I can't tell you now when it will reach the top of the list. There are several authorized hearings ahead of us that will take some time to work through. And I am working with the city manager about how we can expedite the reaching the top of the queue so that we can get this matter heard. And he is continuing to work on it. And I talk to him about it periodically to ensure that he understands how important it is to Uptown that we have this kind of control over the late night venues that cause many of the nuisances in Uptown and many of the security concerns. Another issue I wanted to address is scooters. Scooters will be returning to the city of Dallas in the next few months, and they will be primarily in places of frequent last mile kind of travel, and that would include downtown, uptown, and Deep Ellum. And there are quite a few restrictions on the system and the vendors that hopefully will address the concerns and the issues raised when they were last allowed in Dallas. And those include better GPS tracking so that we can keep them off of our sidewalks and away from pedestrians, and also docking areas where they have to terminate their rides in order to get their credit card charges released. And also curfew. They have to stop working at 9 p.m. There have been many inquiries from particularly residents of State Thomas who are concerned that the docks will be located in front of their homes. And I have talked to the transportation director about that and expressed my concern based on the constituents that they not be placed in front of residences, that they instead should be placed in front of commercial areas so as not to disturb the peace and quiet of our residential neighborhoods. And once that program launches, it will be monitored closely. It's kind of on a trial basis with only 3 vendors, and concerns can be reported to 311 or the Our Dallas app. As we evaluate the program, we will look for opportunities to improve it or modify it as needed. And so we'll continue to coordinate with the micromobility working group for input, and we'll look forward to resident input as well. And to conclude, just an update on the McKinney Avenue two-way conversion, which presents safety issues for pedestrians and I think also motorists. And the purpose of this two-way conversion is to slow down the traffic on McKinney and Cole and make it safer for pedestrians to cross those avenues and to make it easier to navigate that whole corridor. It has been proposed by members of the UDI board that the contribution that UDI had allocated to this project be utilized for the engineering services so that UDI could control that process and ensure that the design has plenty of input from pedestrian and bicycle travel experts and reflects the desires of the Uptown community. And I have spoken to the Assistant City Manager, Majid El Ghaffari, about this. I've gotten some preliminary feedback that it has been approved by the City Attorney's Office. The city now needs to talk to TxDOT about it because TxDOT is putting a lot of money into this project. And so we will need to get their consent to that approach too. But I'm hopeful that that will work out so that Uptown can have direct control over the engineering design. And finally, the bond task force, this is more general information, is forming this month, and we'll start meeting in May to look at projects that will be submitted to the voters in the bond referendum next May of 2024. That will likely include funding for police facilities. And so there are some public safety issues there. I invite you to submit any recommendations that you have for infrastructure improvements or investments that you would like to see through that bond program. You can do that by going to the bond program webpage on the City of Dallas's website, which is www.dallascityhall.com. And there's a form that you can use to submit any requests that you have for projects that should get bond funding. So I'll leave it at that. And I think next up is Chief Herrera. Is that right?
Yes, thank you for that update. And Chief Herrera will let you take it from there.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the invite tonight. Guys, just wanted to go over, some of the challenges and things that we've seen at the beginning of the year. We just passed a big milestone by getting past St. Patrick's Day. We had expected and planned for a lot of folks in the Uptown area, and wasn't quite the crowds that we thought it would be, but that's not a bad thing. We were prepared nonetheless with 3 response teams, We worked very closely with the Uptown Dallas Inc. folks just to make sure that all of our critical and sensitive areas had coverage. And so we got through a really good weekend for St. Patty's Day. But going back to how we all got here, we wanted to talk about, what crime is like in Uptown. And I can tell you, just in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of improvement. The place and the area that we are still seeing issues are in our property crimes. As far as violent crimes go, we are really kind of doing well. I don't have the stats right in front of me, and I'm kind of driving right now. So as soon as I park in a few minutes, I'll be able to give you the exact numbers. But as far as violent crimes go, we had 5 aggravated assaults aggravated robberies in the last 28 days. We didn't see any patterns or any serial groups. Our robbery detectives have been working really close with our intel and our crime response team guys to get the information out to be specific on what we are looking for. We did have one offense that occurred at 28 to 12 binds. Luckily, we had our guys in the right place in the right time. We did apprehend 3 suspects that were armed, and but they were not tied to anything else. And so the style of robbery that's going on, what I wanted to pass on to you guys, it's called jugging. And jugging has been going on for a while. And what these guys do is they focus on individuals who are coming back from banks or ATM machines. And then it slowly started to switch towards jugging started to capture people who basically had their heads buried in their phones, not paying attention to what's going on around them. And we have seen about 2 or 3 of those in just different parts of Uptown. We don't believe that any of those are related, but we are working a couple of individuals that we think were working using the tollway as an avenue to get from North Dallas to into the Uptown area. And so our robbery detectives are working very closely with that. As far as our property crimes go, one of the things that I'm really proud of, and we've been losing our burglary of motor vehicles and unauthorized use of motor vehicles, or UUMVs, for the past year. And so we kind of switched our focus, put a lot of bait vehicles, pole cameras in areas that we were starting to see increases. And I'm happy to say that we have made a few arrests, and our numbers are starting to swing in the direction, the positive direction for us, specifically in our burglary of motor vehicles. But I'd be remiss if I didn't really say that it's really not all the grunt work that our guys are doing in the streets. It's also the work from our neighborhood police officers. And I think Derek Allen's on the line with us. And Derek speaks to multifamily communities, businesses about the Lock, Take, and Hide campaign, which I think is really helpful for us to go out there and remind people to not leave these items out in the open. And sadly to say that of all the things that we get stolen out of cars, I'm getting a lot of guns that are taken. And so we're having to remind people that, hey, yes, you have the right to have your weapon, but please be a responsible gun owner and bring those guns inside and don't leave them inside of your cars. So those are some of the challenges that we have seen as far as crime stats go. Now, a couple of things that I wanted to talk about that do not show up on the stats, but are a nuisance, and I know they're a pain in your side because they're a pain in mine, are these guys that come out here and rev their engines and peel out and appear to be racing up and down McKinney. So for the last month, I've asked our racing and speeding task force groups to pay some specific attention to Uptown, and then transition over into my downtown area and then my other entertainment areas. And other than a couple of citations written, and I think we did tow one vehicle from an individual, we haven't seen the large groups of folks who we've seen in the past in some parts of town that like to race up and down our streets. So that is one of the things that we'll continue to work on. And obviously with the summer months and the warmer months approaching us, we're going to be increasing our visibility in the Uptown Dallas area, specifically during the weekends. So we'll be getting with Chuck to kind of see what kind of scheduling his folks are going to be doing, and making sure we act as a force multiplier when we add our staff with, his team as well. Let's see, what else I think you guys would be interested in knowing. So new for us, and not really new, but we have a new director for the Office of Integrated Public Safety Solutions. So I've reached out to Kevin Oden, who is the director, and asked him to come out and do an assessment with our folks in Uptown and with our neighborhood police officers, so we can kind of get a bird's eye view and have them look at things that might not be criminal in nature, but maybe creating a safe haven for criminals to create, to take advantage of opportunities like low lighting, and also to address some of the homelessness and some of the aggressive homeless individuals that we're getting reports of in the area. But nonetheless, we have a lot of work to do, and just looking forward to working with Uptown Dallas and making this a safe summer. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there, and if there's and save some room for Q&A, and if there's any other questions, I'll go ahead and turn that back over to you guys.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. Is it echoing? Sorry, maybe better now. Okay, great. So real quick, we want to make sure we get to as many questions as possible. If you will, thank you to both to Councilman Ridley and to Chief Herrera for joining us and providing an overview, and we'll get to some of the questions that we see coming in. Anita Simmons is on our team here, Director of Marketing Communications. Anita, do you want to go over a little how we're going to run this Q&A part?
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. We want to make sure that we get through Q&A as efficiently as possible. I'm already seeing a lot of questions coming into the chat, which is perfect. We will start asking those. If you'd like to ask your question in person, you can either raise your hand physically or feel free to use the Zoom tool with the little hand motion. And if you don't mind, please keep yourself muted in between to cut down on any additional noise. So that is about it. I think we already have some questions coming in. Jamie, I think you have a few of those.
Correct. So I'll get us started. Chief Herrera, while we know it's natural to have more crime during late night and holidays, special events, what is being done to make sure that we have adequate policing during the daytime hours? Because I know a lot of the resources have been redirected to those late night concerns. So I'll let you answer.
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that commanders all over the city are facing is really how to strategically move our resources to deal with the bulk of our population. I mean, specifically in the central area, we have a lot of nice outdoor spaces, and so there'll be a lot of folks out there. And one of my goals is to increase our bike visibility. I've already started begging and buying more horse treats so that I can get our mounted patrol to pay some attention to our parks. I have seen them in the West End and over at the AAC getting ready for the NCAA women's tournament next weekend. So really just kind of creating opportunities for our officers to be visible either on foot, on bikes, and on our horses. So you should start seeing those officers probably this weekend. I know I put the request out for mounted, and I did see them, like I said, around the AAC, and hopefully we'll start seeing them out in West Village and up and down McKinney soon.
All right, one more question, and then I'll turn it over to Anita to kind of start with some of the other questions we're getting as well. And excuse me, as a property owner and resident, how can we best protect ourselves and our property, whether it's cars or homes, when it comes to the types of crimes that you're seeing? I know you mentioned, Chief, that people are on their phone, they're not watching their surroundings. Based on the types of crime you're seeing, what would be your best advice on how we can help ourselves in this situation?
So I mentioned earlier how I've kind of really challenged my neighborhood police officers to get more involved in our multifamily communities, to develop more crime watch groups. And we can get creative on how we get together, because I don't want it to be boring where we stand up in front of you and read stats. And I want it to be productive. I want to challenge them to have folks come out here and share information. Hey, we've got this guy over here that I don't know if he's doing, X, Y, and Z. And then somebody else gives us a little more information. Well, yeah, he is doing that. And we build off of crime watch groups. The other thing that I find that is extremely helpful is to making sure that if you have, there are some condominiums that have their own doorbells. If they have Ring camera access or videos that they're more than willing to share with us, to be a truly, for law enforcement agencies to be successful in 2023 and going forward, we can try to hire as many officers that we can, but the challenge is getting the right intelligence and information to our officers to work off of. And the way we get that is by, information that we get from our crime watch groups, video cameras. If you have access, like I said, to a Ring camera, sharing that information and getting that to us, I think that's how we're going to make a difference. And I'm sure that a lot of people on the call today probably saw the briefing that we had with the officer involved shooting. And I just want to touch on that, because that officer was doing exactly what we ask our officers to do, and that's follow up on information from our community so that we can together pull and weed out the criminal element. The officer had received some information from an apartment manager and said, hey, the guy that was, you guys thought were breaking into cars is out here again. Our officers followed up on that, and that's good information. And we were able to catch him. Unfortunately, we had to get into a shooting, but we have to work together, and the police can chase and play whack-a-mole all day long, but I'd rather put bad guys in jail and make our community safe. And the way we're going to do that is by building on our relationships.
So member, really, it looks like we have some questions coming into the chat that are regarding the overlay. And one of them is, when do you think the SUP ordinance will take effect? And what can the public do to potentially help move it forward in the queue for the city? And secondly, is there another item that could be possible, such as a curfew or reducing hours of these bars?
Well, that's several questions rolled into one. Let me try to address them all. We have authorized the hiring of additional planners in the Planning and Urban Design Department in last year's budget that was passed in September. Unfortunately, although they've been advertising for those positions, they are having a lot of difficulty hiring. And that is attributable largely to the fact that planners seem to prefer to work in private industry, where they can make more money as a planning consultant than they can working for the city. But I have been speaking to the director of that department about broadening their search to outside of Texas and to marketing the city as a desirable place to be a planner. And I'm hopeful that in the coming months, we will get new hires. But there is quite a backlog ahead of us, unfortunately, some of which are several years older than our request for the authorized hearing. And so what you can do to try to get us closer to the top is send an email to the city manager, TC Broadnax, and tell them that you live or work in Uptown or own property there, that this is a major safety and economic development concern, and that you would like him to find a way to advance us to the top of the queue as soon as possible. I have been speaking with him about that on those very issues several times, but I think that if he starts getting more email from Uptown, that will help weigh on any strategies that he can come up with to achieve that objective. I think that was all of the questions.
Has there been consideration about a potential curfew?
Oh, curfew. no, that is not something that we have considered. That's a pretty drastic remedy. We do have that for minors that have to be in by a certain time, but we, to my knowledge, have never had one for adults. And I think there would be a lot of pushback on personal liberty grounds if we tried to exclude adults from being out after 10 o'clock or midnight. I don't think that would be very politically acceptable.
Thank you. Phil Cobb, I believe I saw you raise your hand. Do you have a question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. This is to Paul. I want to emphasize, I actually want to stay on this overlay question. At the last UDI board meeting, I thought I heard you say that it would be somewhere between 2 and 3 years before we're even going to have a hearing. And I've been in the neighborhood. Next year, I will have been in the neighborhood for 50 years, either as a restaurateur, a property owner, a tenant, and I've 34 of those years as the leader of the McKinney Avenue Trolley. I'm more worried today than any time in the last 50 years for the future of our neighborhood, and I mean that seriously. This is not a matter of just a zoning thing. It's to me, it's a matter of life and death. We have people that were killed 1 block from my office, and I think it's just unacceptable to have to wait 2 to 3 years for a hearing on this. We've done a lot of the work already at Uptown, and there's been a precedent set in Lois Greenville when Angela Hunt, in a matter of months, got an overlay district through the city, and it's one of the more popular entertainment districts now that they solved the problem and got rid of the bad actors. And we still have enough bad actors in the neighborhood. There's been progress. I agree, Paul. But I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's not status quo and sit around and wait for 2 or 3 years. I'm really worried about where this neighborhood is going to be in 3 years if we don't get this overlay district done.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you for your question, Phil. I understand your concern about the conditions, and I am doing everything that I can. I assure you, I am still committed to backing the SUP. I think that it's the way to go. It's not the only way that we have to combat crime in Uptown, as I'm sure Chief Herrera will support. It is a zoning option that I think would be helpful. But I don't hire the planners. I can authorize money in the budget for additional positions, which I have done. And I am pushing the city manager as hard as I can. But you've got to realize that there are other neighborhoods in the city that also have security concerns, that also have authorized hearings that are several years ahead of ours. And it's a political issue to jump ahead of all of those people who've been in the queue longer than we have been in order to get what we want in Uptown. I am trying to get the city manager to find some exception or some workaround, but there is none in the existing procedures to jump ahead of older cases in the queue. And so we're just on new ground. And the 2 to 3 years that I predicted was based upon a very rough estimate of the number of cases ahead of us in the queue, and I'm hoping that we can improve on that if we can find some means to advance in the queue faster than the normal sequence of first in, first out. But I just can't guarantee that, and I don't want to raise people's expectations beyond what I can deliver.
Thank you, Mr. Ridley. We have another question that is based on traffic, speeding, running red lights, not yielding to pedestrians. Also, people saying that it's dangerous with the amount of ride shares coming through Uptown. Can Chief Herrera address a way or what is being done to keep vehicles from speeding?
So that is definitely a big challenge for us in a lot of areas. And right now we're trying to really strategically look at aggressive driving and road rage. Probably in the last 3 weeks, we've had, 5 or 6 road rage incidents that ended in shooting, with one lady, one person being killed. We've got to slow these folks down. And so, from our patrol standpoint, we've got our guys that are trying to work traffic in between the call loads. But one of my strategies is going to be looking at trying to get our motorcycle unit and our street, what do we call those? I forget the name of it. It's our undercover, just plain cars. They call them STAR cars, which stands for Strategic Target Against Road Rage. But those guys are really just looking for aggressive driving. We are increasing the fleet of those cars so that they'll just be a solid black or white SUV or a Dodge Charger that we're going to be deployed in our areas like in Uptown, up and down Main Elm and Commerce, and downtown. We see a lot of that as well. But that's going to be one of the things that we do for now. If you have a vehicle that, somebody lives in one of your apartments or that's in the neighborhood that you see frequently, I mean, if you give me that information, we can set something up where we're looking out for this vehicle. I can't go write them tickets unless a police officer observes it. But if you can share that information with us, that would help us out a lot. But to go back, really what we're looking at is try to get our motorcycle officers, our motor jocks, and our STAR car folks to target some of those areas where we're getting a lot of complaints.
Thank you. Judy Hurst, I believe you have a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself. You're muted, Judy.
Sorry. Paul answered several of my questions, but I did want to ask him. I heard someone say, I think it was Phil, said that Greenville Avenue got their zoning case in several months. Is this SUP overlay going to be like a regular zoning case? I mean, will we have a certain percentage of petitions we need to get for this, or how does that work, Phil? Not Phil, Paul.
Oh,
Well, it is a zoning case. It will have to go through hearings before the Plan Commission. It will not have to go to the Zoning Ordinance Advisory Committee, which is good because that would be another level of delay. It will go straight to the Plan Commission after staff is authorized to work on it and presents their recommendations. It will not require petitions because it is an authorized hearing. You don't have to have the permission of each and every property owner in Uptown.
Oh,
That's
wonderful.
why we're doing it as an authorized hearing.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity for the city to determine appropriate zoning within the area of concern, which is the entire UDI PID, so that they can look at regulations for the late night venues, similar to what was done on Greenville. It's not exactly the same. And you've got to realize that that was 10 years ago when there were no doubt fewer cases in the authorized hearing queue. And they just accumulated over time so that now there are many of them ahead of us. And so it's really not an apples to apples comparison time-wise.
Bill
Well,
Weinberg.
the people in State Times are definitely for a solution to the nuisance bars. You already know that. You've already heard from me on that, but just want to mimic that again.
Well, yes, and I understand the concern. And please realize that this SUP is not the only way to address nuisance bars, as has been seen by our late night venue task force and code operations. We do issue notices of violation for noise, for various building conditions, for overcrowding, the fire department patrols the late night venues for exceeding their capacity. We have parking restrictions. So there are a lot of other ordinances that we can enforce in the meantime to control the worst effects of nuisance bars.
Thanks.
Bill Weinberg. you like to unmute and ask your question? There we go. Oh, we're still having an audio issue. I'm not hearing you. Robert Wright, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, and I'm going to go back, Councilman, to the timing of the SUP overlay. And I'm going to echo what Phil Cobb said earlier and add to it that the perception outside of Uptown is that Uptown is a dangerous neighborhood, and people don't want to go out in Uptown. And I'm, quite frankly, I'm getting tired of hearing my friends and colleagues who live outside of the district say that. I believe that Lower Greenville, which is what we should probably strive for in Uptown, took quite a long time to get where it is today. And my worry is that if we have to wait 2 or 3 years, and I understand there's a process, by the time we get the SUP overlay, if we get it and things change, we could be talking 8 to 10 years from this point today. So I think it's mission critical that we try to get in front of, I believe it was the Planning Commission hearing. Is that correct?
Yes.
To try to get this issue moved up in the queue.
Well,
Perception is reality, and the perception right now outside of Uptown is a dangerous district to be in.
Well, I'll repeat my responses from before. This is not the only tool in our arsenal to control crime. And it is similarly not a panacea that's going to immediately wipe out all crime as soon as this SUP is put in place. So I think we need to have realistic expectations for it. I know it's easy to say, all we need is an SUP, but we also need effective code enforcement, effective police enforcement, and effective community reporting of incidents so that we can be aware of what the conditions are and address them directly. In addition, I've explained that I don't control the queue. The procedure has been set. There are many criteria that they use to establish the position on the queue, most of which it is first in, first out. And I'm doing everything I can to try to find an exception to that, but there isn't one that exists today. We're going to have to rely upon the city manager to come up with some creative approach, and I'm trying to do that.
Thank you, Councilman Ridley. The next question in the queue is probably directed best to Chief Herrera, potentially Derek Allen, Chuck. What are other businesses in Uptown, be it apartments or bars or restaurants? Is there partnerships amongst those security officers with DPD? Chief Herrera, would you like to take that one?
Sure, yeah. So we do partner with a lot of security companies, and they are very cooperative. We've only had a couple of experiences where we needed some information, from a video camera, and they made us get a warrant for it. But the security companies are really, to me, I mean, we're one and the same as far as wanting to create a safe environment for the residents. I haven't had too many establishments that were too difficult in really trying to help us out. And what I mean by that is there's a group out there called 24 Hour Dallas, and Chuck Del Tufo has been at a couple of these meetings, so he can kind of attest to it. We're starting to get a lot more cooperation out of the businesses that in the past would push disturbances out into the streets and create more of a public nuisance and make it more of a bigger issue than it would have if they had just kind of calmed things down and then notified us before it escalated. So this past month we had a seminar on de-escalation. A number of security companies came out, door guys for establishments were there, and we had some really good conversations about what we can do, what we can't do, and what we need for them to do to kind of help us out and keep from putting their establishments on the radar for not being good residents. it's something that's a work in progress, and we're going to continue to do that with them. We meet monthly with this 24-hour Dallas group, and a lot of good feedback is, and conversations are going back and forth. So I wanted to, while I have the opportunity, we talk about reality versus perception and crime in the Uptown area, and I just wanted to just kind of go over real quickly. We have seen our numbers do really well as far as our violent crime goes. Our violent crime is down 20% in the last 14 days, and down 14.5% in our nonviolent crimes. Again, the biggest driver for those is going to be our unauthorized use of motor vehicles. So for an overall grand total of crime down in that Uptown area is down 14.8%. But we do get the negative connotation out there by it's unsafe. And whenever I hear these conversations, I always ask, what is unsafe about it? Tell me. And sometimes you get a lot of people just repeating rhetoric. And so I just want to make sure that you guys understand that we're here to work together with you guys. We want to promote safety in Uptown, and we want folks to come here and have a good time, spend their money, and want to come back to Uptown. And so that's kind of our drive. And it's one of those things that we work very closely with our security companies and establishments, and holding them accountable whenever they do things wrong. As Councilmember Ridley mentioned, our late night enforcement team has been very active, and we just had our meeting today and talking about getting ready for the warmer months. And we're going to try to be more proactive instead of reactive, and hopefully we can get some of these guys to start being good neighbors with you all. Chuck, is there anything you wanted to add, or Derek, with the question that was asked earlier?
Yeah, thank you, Chief. This is Chuck. So I just want to add that myself and Officer Allen and Officer Shaw, the two Uptown Dallas MPO officers, we go out every day visiting apartment complexes, businesses, and we look at stats and we see where property crime has been happening. And those two guys do a great job getting video footage, taking it back. But I will say the underlying problem, what I see, because I'm here all the time, is a lack of the police presence. It's policing 101. And I know the Dallas police are shorthanded, but I meet with Chief Herrera a lot. He does give us manpower when he has it. But unfortunately, we have to start thinking out of the box and getting more visibility. And I think that's why the uptick has been recently, because lately there's no police in Uptown. When Officer Allen leaves and Shaw leaves, seems like there's never a police car around. They're answering call to call. So we need that visibility day and night. And I hope down the road with more officers being hired that we will see that. But once again, this is something that has to be addressed sooner than later, especially with the summer months coming.
Chuck, that was another question that was in the chat, and it says, what % of budgeted police officer positions are open, and how does that compare to the past 12 to 24 months?
So I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but what I can say is that we're authorized to hire 250 officers a year, and that we're facing the same challenge that every police department in this country is facing right now. It's getting officers hired, good quality officers, I may add, to come work for us. We're all stealing from each other. Last week we were in New York, and we probably had, last I heard, about 90 NYPD officers that came out to go through our process. And so, but we have to get creative. And as Chuck mentioned, we're trying to put more boots on the ground, but it's just, we're not yielding what we set out to accomplish. I'll give you an example. Last year we tried to hire 250. We hired 200, but we had 238 retire. So we're 38 in the hole. So some creative ideas are being tossed around and trying to keep officers here a couple of more years. We're targeting because the average officer stays for about 28 years. So if we can target that 28 to 29-year officer and get them to stay here to year 30 or a couple of more years, we can grow our department on the back end and hopefully start seeing some of the fruits of that on the street. So that right now is one of the things that we are working on. And we've talked to Chief Garcia sent something out to our officers yesterday via our internet, through messaging, and it's getting some good feedback. So I think we're heading down the right road.
Thank you for that. Mr. Daniel Gordon, do you have a question?
Yes, let me just pull it up. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. So I had a question, which I also posted in the chat. I'll just read it. Palms Nightlife Club has caused a ton of noise and commotion late into the night, during the week, and on weekends. In fact, the bass is so loud that it makes my apartment in McKinney Uptown shake for hours on end. I know you spoke earlier about certain bars and nightlife, clubs being investigated. Is Palms being investigated for, violations of various sound ordinances? And if not, how do we report that? What process do we go through? And this, goes beyond just Palms. I guess it goes to all nightlife clubs and anything that's causing such commotion. How do you go about reporting that without, just dialing 911?
Thank you for your question, Daniel.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I can start, Chief, and you can finish. That is an issue that needs to be reported to 311. Unless it's some kind of crime in progress, it's not for 911. And when you do report something to 911, either by phone or the Our Dallas app, please also send an email to my office so that we can track those noise complaints. And we can work with code to do another stakeout if necessary, or send inspectors by when they're noisiest so that they can enforce the current noise ordinances against those establishments.
Thank you. Bill, would you like to ask? Oh, go ahead.
Did you have an answer about that specific, just because you mentioned at the beginning which ones are being investigated? So I'm wondering if Palms is one of those that is being investigated, because then, I wouldn't need to go through the process of actually reporting them. I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, you should report it even if they are being investigated. I don't know off the top of my head whether that place has occurred to the code enforcement people. I will check on that. But please, the more times you report noise complaints, the more likely that you're going to get quicker action out of code. If it's just a one-off thing, that gets less attention than if they get 10 reports in a week.
Thank you. Bill Weinberg, do you want to give it a shot?
Take two. Councilman Ridley, I know you mentioned that the SUP is a political process and we're at the back of the queue. So I know there's probably other city council members who have their own very important cases. And I don't want to put all the burden on you to have to fight all these city council members and ask for us to cut in line. Can I team up with you, or can we team up with you so I can speak to these other city council members or these other stakeholders and express to them why I think that our situation is more urgent than their situation? Can we work together to make that happen?
Well, I would encourage you to contact other council members that you may have a relationship with to suggest that. There are about 10 different cases ahead of us in the queue now.
Great. I'll try to work with you or your staff to get a list of those cases, and maybe we could brainstorm together and figure out what's the best tactic to use to jump ahead in the line.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Doug Nichols, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I would. For Paul, just wanted to say in general, crime and nuisance has been much better in Uptown. I've been down here for decades, not quite as long as Phil, but almost. And I live here with 5 other family members. And it's been nice in that the nights that are quiet are the nights that should be quiet. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And as we all know, Sundays used to be just an absolute horror show. and they aren't any longer. So there has been some real improvement. We do have a shortage of cops crews in the neighborhood, no doubt. One of the concerns, though, is that this crime can easily come back. We know how quickly these bars pop up, and I am in the middle of a bunch of them on Fairmont, and I see them come and go. But boy, when they come, you know it, and it just goes till 3, 4 o'clock. There's shootings. We've had bullets in one of our houses here, and it's not great. So on this SUP, there's 2 to 3 years, as you've heard, Paul, and are sick of hearing. That really is not acceptable. One of the questions I have: do we know for a fact that the 9 or 10 in queue ahead of us are actually public safety oriented sort of applications, or are some of them, as somebody had put in the past, the height of your new fence sort of things? I mean, I think we need to ascertain that. That's because we really do have a case here. My God, we had 2 murders back in February.
It's an interesting question.
Yeah, behind the bar. So
yeah, go ahead, Paul.
And then, well, one last thing, one comment. I'm mixing comments with questions. Sorry about that. But the racing is terrible, and I'd say I'd vote for the years I've lived down here. Sunday night's probably the biggest night for motor. It's not just cars, it's motorcycles. And mine, I can't believe how high they rev and how noisy they are. But they're pretty consistent. So good luck with that one. And that's a tough one. But I am interested about the queue, if you have any color on the nature of them. And finally, can the department hire contracted planners? If we can't hire people full-time to work 40 hours a week, nobody wants to work 40 hours a week in an office anymore. Maybe we also can hire contractors. So that's a possibility.
Thank you.
That's it. Thanks.
Go ahead, Councilmember Ridley.
Well, thank you for your questions, Doug. I don't know the ins and outs of all 10 cases that are ahead of us in the queue. And I suspect that they involve a lot more than just fence height, because as authorized hearings, they involve typically a lot of complex issues with a lot of controversy with different perspectives in those areas. It's not just like zoning a single property. It's like zoning all of Uptown, like we're trying to do here. And so it's a lot of parties interested and a lot of issues in many of those. And I'm sure that public safety is in the mix in many of them. In terms of hiring contract planners, I'll suggest that to our planning director. If that's obviously going to increase the expense of bringing planners on if we have to go to private consultants, but we do that for special projects, and I'll ask if we can do that in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Ridley. We do have another question about the ability to and potential of escalating fines on some of these rowdy bars and the noise ordinances. Is that a possibility?
Well, yes, in fact, we're doing that. We have what's called the habitual nuisance ordinance, which is designed to address repetitive violations of city code, noise, building conditions, overcrowding, etc. And when they get 3 citations within a 12-month period of time, then we can designate them as an habitual nuisance property, which they have an opportunity to rebut. But if they do not convince the staff that they have successfully rebutted that allegation, then we get to post a sign on their front door that says, this is an habitual nuisance property. And it also entitles the code officials to, and working with DPD as well, to insist that they take certain measures, security measures, or what have you, to address their violations. And this has just started about 6 months or so ago. It's a relatively new ordinance. And so far it has definitely gotten the attention of several properties that have been the recipient of such a designation.
Excellent, thank you. As we come to the end of our meeting, we'll ask just a couple more questions. A lot of questions that are in the queue deal with mentioning daytime crime, even though we do talk a lot about nighttime crime. Do we have any numbers related to the amount of security, DPD, as well as our tactical tactical services, their daytime hours and how it compares to the nighttime hours. Chief Herrera?
Yes, so our daytime crime, we are down 20%. And these are the hours that we capture between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. And that's in the last 7 days. Last 14 days we're even. The last 28 days we're down 40%. Now, how that compares with our evening hours, and let me find my because I typically break them down by the watches. So our third watch hours, we're down 50% in violent crime on third watch, down 60% in the last 7 days. In the last 28 days, we are, and this included those 5 robberies, because we had nothing to compare it with the previous 28 days. So we were up 100% and down 29% in nonviolent crime for an overall of negative 14.71% for the 28-day overall violent and nonviolent crime. So, we do see more, I would say, because we have a lot more people out and about walking around during the day hours and the evening hours, we typically get the calls when people see something, they are calling in and letting us know. So the numbers are reflective of that.
Thank you. And we'll get one more personal question here. Michael Shackman, would you like to ask your question real quick? You're on mute as of now.
Yeah, so I had one question and also wanted to give a comment. So I've seen a lot of comments about, 311 doesn't do anything. What are you doing about this? What are you doing about that? And I actually have some personal experience with 311 and with some of the measures that have recently been implemented. And we've seen some success with some of the things. So I guess with 311, and I think, the chief and Chuck and all the officers will tell you, if you calling 311 once, you're right, it really doesn't do anything. But the repeated calls to 311, it raises the stats. And if you and your neighbors and everyone keeps calling 311, it's going to get some attention. But it's more of a marathon than a sprint. Like, they're not going to come out and shut the bar down that night, but it will get the attention. And we've seen some bars in this area that have been problems for a while. We've seen success. It takes several times for code to come out, and they have to give them a notice, and then they write them tickets, and eventually I can think of one that eventually shut down, because of it. And there's a couple others that are in progress. So I would encourage you, if you're complaining about 311 doesn't do anything, 911, to continue to call 311. Also, if you live in an apartment complex, get with your property manager, and they can get with Officer Allen, who does a great job of coming out and explaining to the residents what they can do. So they can get in touch with Jose Ruiz, who I don't think is on here. He's been actually very beneficial to helping get some of these problem bars and problem restaurants in the system. Like, get them in the process, get them in the system, continue to get tickets and things written. Those are things you can do. So I would encourage anybody, again, get with your property manager if you live in an apartment complex, and ask them to reach out to Officer Allen. They should know who he is, because he comes to all the properties. And that being said, can you, I don't know if Chief or if Chuck or anyone has do you guys have a list of the establishments that have been issued the warning, and how many tickets and kind of where they are in this process?
I don't have that. This is Chief Herrera, but I can get with our code enforcement guys who primarily write most of those tickets. The tickets are primarily written by code enforcement for the noise and the promoter permits, and DFR writes mostly for health and safety and overcrowding. And so that is something I think we can get. That is not a tough ask. We can certainly get that for you guys.
Yeah, and code, just to let you know, code has been, they've really stepped up recently, and they have a task force out there. So if you get with your property managers, they can get you the number to the code people who will send someone out that night. So I really recommend you guys do that.
Thank you, Michael, for that good feedback too. So I want to take a quick moment. Thank everyone for being on the call tonight. I know we didn't get to every single question. Always remember, if you have a true emergency, please call 911. Our non-emergency tip line, 214-214-UPTN. And also you can email us if there's some follow-up you would like. You can email us at publicsafety@uptowndallas.net. And I think, Anita, if you want to put that in the comments, but again, publicsafety@uptowndallas.net. Please stay engaged in our community, and together we're going to do what we can to address our public safety concerns. And I appreciate everyone's time and effort this evening. Have a great night.
Thank you for having us.